Hello, this is Jerry Temple. Today I'm going to be giving you a presentation on a very nice 1981 Cessna 340A Ram Series 6 with brand new engines and propellers. I have a history with this airplane. First of all, the photo you're looking at is at Addison Airport in North Dallas. The airplane was flown down from its home base in Dunklin, Oklahoma for me to see, take some photos, confirm specs, which we've done. You're obviously on my website, jerrytemple.net or jtatwins.com. Before we go any further, please check the spec sheet for detailed hours and other equipment. It's the dominant document. We try to keep it current. Also look at the technical data sheet, key dimensions and weights, but spec sheet is the most important thing to look at. Try to keep it current. Always assume a few more hours on the airplane. I sold this airplane about 3 or 4 years ago for a Dallas energy company to a physician in Oklahoma, and a couple years later he sold it to the present owner. Again, the airplane's based in Dunklin, Oklahoma, so hopefully this will be my third sale of this airplane. Today we're going to go through and show you some of the features and benefits of this 340A and explain some systems and equipment. First of all, of course, the 340 is the most popular, and it's a mouthful, entry-level cabin class, piston-powered, pressurized cabin class airplane. It has 6 seats. Most people run them with 5. Various systems in the airplane for different icing, different air conditioning. We'll try to address everything specific to this particular airplane. Let's just start with the paint on this airplane. It's very strong. It's obviously, as you can see, white with a red and blue stripe, good old red, white, and blue that carries through on the tail, the tip tanks, and on the nacelles. The engine is the Continental TSIO 520NB. This is the Ram Series 6, so the horsepower is increased from the original 310 to 335 on each side, 1600 hour TVO, and remember, of course, TVO is nothing but a suggestion, but that's far off. This airplane has fresh Ram engines, approximately 30 to 40 hours on the engines and the propellers. The propellers are the Hartzell 76-inch 3-bladed heated propellers, so engine times, prop times are not something we need to discuss. The airplane has 4 windows on each side, very open, non-claustrophobic. For people that think this is a little airplane, once they get in it, they're going to really enjoy traveling, and you'll have a long line of volunteers, employees, clients, relatives, friends, family wanting to fly in the airplane. As we go through this presentation, we'll talk about baggage and icing and a few other things. Let's talk about fuel. That's always a question that gets asked to me frequently. The tip tanks and the mains, synonymous term. You can say tips or tanks, it's okay with me. Tips or mains is what I meant to say. The forward portion of the tip tank, and we'll show that in a little bit in a second, is just a fairing that houses the strobe and the position lights. The tip tanks are 50 gallons each, so that's 150 gallons in each tip tank. We always take off and land on the mains, the tips. Always, always, always. No exception. Tip tank, take off and land on the tip tanks, the mains. We go fly for about an hour. Now your first 25-30 minutes are in climb, so you're using a little more gas. So we climb for, let's just say, 25-30 minutes, level off, fly for another 25-30 minutes. That's 1 hour. And we reach down on the floor and switch from the tip tanks, the mains, to the aux tanks. Those are 2 rubber cells within the wings. One's a 20-gallon tank and one's or bladder, and one's 11.5. That's 31.5. So here we go. We got 50-50 on each side, 31.5 aux tanks on each side. That equals 166 total, 163 usable. This airplane has sitting behind the left engine, the one we're looking at, a 20-gallon nacelle tank, sometimes referred to as a wing locker tank, but it's a 20-gallon rubber nacelle tank that sits behind the left engine. 163 plus 20, 183. That's the usable fuel, 183 gallons. Again, 50 in each tip, 31.5 in each aux tank within the wing, and then a 20-gallon nacelle tank, 183. Here's how we fly this airplane. Again, we're going to take off and land on the mains, fly for an hour, switch the aux, run those down. I'll show you how to safely do that, and then go back to the mains. Most of the time you'll not put any gas in the nacelle tank. You don't need it. It's weight, and weight requires power and energy to carry it. But there'll be some days that you need that extra gas. Perhaps you have a great tailwind and you can make it all the way to your destination but with having that extra gas and still having proper IFR, VFR reserve without coming in too low on fuel. So on those days, we take off again on the mains, go fly for 1 hour again, and then we transfer the 20 gallons from the left nacelle tank out to the left tip tank. It's real simple to do. Takes about 45 minutes. We're still flying on the mains during that time. And then after that fuel is transferred, we're going to go get the fuel in the Aux Tanks, and then we'll go back to the mains. The goal of a good twin Cessna pilot is to land with as much gas in the main tanks, the tip tanks, as possible. If you think that sounded complicated, here's a deal I'll make with you. And I've made this numerous times, and it's absolutely a guarantee. If we go fly for about 2.5 to 3 hour cross country, when we land, you'll be able to teach the system. You'll go to the front of the room and teach the system. I guarantee it. Not that big a deal. Here in this image, you can see the polished spinner, excellent paint on the airplane, 4 windows on each side, large visibility, pilot, right front seat passenger, or co-pilot. I use those terms interchangeably, co-pilot, right front seat, large side windows, large nose baggage area. The airplane flies real nice with the nose baggage full and heavy. You'll usually bulk out before you weight out. I think it's placarded for 350 pounds, 300 or 350, but you'll bulk out before you weight out. Notice there's a taxi line on the nose gear. The landing lights extend out of the tip tanks. We'll see those in a little bit. The scoop that you see underneath the engine is part of the Ram 6 modification. That's the scoop for the intercooler. Intercooler gets more thick, cold air into the induction system, giving you more power at altitude. 304 Juliet Whiskey, good number, good paint. And let's move forward and look at something else now. You can see the 100 amp alternator, part of the No and Ice package. This airplane is certified for flight in the No and Ice. What that means is we have boots on the outer wing, the inner stub, and the entire tail, the horizontal and vertical, heated propellers, fuselage ice protection plate, which we'll see in another image, so if the props throw some ice, it doesn't ding up the metal on the airplane, the aluminum. Heated pitot static stall. Here's how the hot props work. There's 2 pads on each propeller, an outer pad, a hot pad, and inner. They just get warm to the touch. They don't get red hot like the pitot tube. So we've got 3 outers and 3 inners. There's little wires that come out into that boot. 3 outer pads, 3 inner. When we turn on the prop heat, it's supposed to start on the left side of the airplane. Engineers always tell me you have to start someplace. You can't start no place. But who cares at altitude which side it's started on? But if we're pre-flighting, I'd probably just come out of the airplane, turn the switches on, come around here to this left side, and check the heat on the 3 outer pads. They heat for about 25-30 seconds, and then simultaneously they start to cool, and the 3 inners heat. So that's a minute. Half a minute on the 3 outers, half a minute on the 3 inners. Then it jumps to the other side of the airplane. There's a little prop amp meter on the panel, which we'll see later in this presentation, that lets you know the props are working properly, the prop heat, that is. So 3 outers, 3 inners, switch sides, back and forth, back and forth. So if let's just say we were at, for example, 18,000, we need to come down through 3,000 or 4,000 feet of cold, wet air. We get the pitot heat going, pitot static stall, turn on the hot props, and we'll be in good shape. Here's an example where you can see the fuselage ice protection plate. If you look at the rear latch on the cabin, on the nose door, you see the couple little latches there, and right above that looks like it's about 10 inches wide. There's a plate that's riveted and glued on. It's called the fuselage ice protection plate. You're also seeing the plate on the pilot's windshield, a hot plate. It's part of the no icing option on 310s and 340s. The windshield itself doesn't heat, but you have this hot plate. You'll rarely use it, take my word, you rarely use it. The 35,000 BTU heater slash defrosters, very effective on both pilot and co-pilot side. So again, if we need to come down through a little bit of cold, wet air, get the defroster going, get the windshield toasty, nice and warm, most of the ice will just slide off, plus you're descending to warmer temperatures. Great visibility for pilot and right front seat passenger. Nose flies real heavy. real nice with the nose heavy. Ram Series 6, 335 horsepower. You wanted a pressurized airplane. You wanted to be able to fly high, not have to use oxygen mask, and just enjoyment of pressurization. It's a quieter airplane because it's built tighter, and you'll be more refreshed when you get someplace just because of the pressurization. A byproduct of turbocharging is warm compressed air, and that can be our friend or our foe. So here's how pressurization works. The warm air coming in off the turbocharging system goes through the wing stub. Then it goes through the scoop that you see underneath the airplane, not the scoop under the nacelle. That's called an air exchanger. And we have a knob in front of the right front seat passenger that rotates left and right, clockwise, counterclockwise. And so here comes this warm air. It goes into that scoop. On a cold, cold day, we want that warm air to come into the cabin and help keep us warm. So here's the flow. We reach up and we take that little knob and turn it to the right clockwise that says heat increase. So now we close the scoop, preventing ram air at 200 knots from cooling that nice friendly warm air. Now that warm air goes forward to the heater, does a 180-degree turn, comes back through the heater. You can see those two pipes coming out there. One's the heater intake, one's the exhaust. So the air comes back, the warm air comes back through the heater and into the cabin. And the heater says to you, thank you very much for giving me some warm air to further heat, not cold air. On days that, and many times you'll not need the heater, just the warm pressurized air is adequate to keep us nice and comfortable. But if it's really cold up at altitude or taxiing out in the morning, we use the heater, and it's more efficient because we've given it warm air to heat. On a hot day, we rotate that knob counterclockwise, and open the scoop. It's open now, so the ram air coming in at a couple hundred knots somewhat cools down that warm pressurized air. It still goes forward, still comes back through the heater, but of course we're not going to turn the heater on a hot day. It now enters the cabin at a temperature not as hot as when it came out of the turbos, and the air conditioner says thank you for bringing in some air that's not as hot and making me look a little bit better. The pipe you see coming out of the stub is called the dump valve. We'll show you some tricks, but that's a way that if we had some contaminated air, we didn't want it to come into the cabin, we can just let it dump overboard. You still fly on one engine, still fly with pressurization coming in from just one side, and there's a few more tricks that pressurized pilots get to do because of dump valves, which we can show you. Several nice things to see here in this photo. Again, the taxi light. You see the hot plate on the pilot's windshield. Great visibility on both sides of the windshield. You see the hot props. You'll notice where the prop wash goes over the horizontal stabilizer. It's a nice feature, elevator and stabilizer. It's a nice feature in twin Cessnas. Early in the takeoff roll, you have a nice alive yoke, pitch elevator, laid into the flare because you have some lift prop wash lift going over the lifting surfaces, the elevator and the horizontal stabilizer. One of the things that benefits twin Cessnas on crosswind takeoff and landings is this wide stance gear. It's very wide compared to many airplanes. And when you learn to fly, no doubt you've heard the word short field, soft field takeoffs, but probably no one uttered the word narrow runway. Well, it's common sense. If we have a short runway, it's not going to be very wide. So, and let's just create a worst case scenario. We have a short runway, a narrow runway, and we have a crosswind. Let's make it from the pilot side, the left side of the airplane. Nice stable approach, head out of the cockpit, know your power settings and airspeed. Don't stare at the airspeed indicator. Nice steep approach. You're not trying to grease it on. You got to get it on this short runway, and you got a crosswind, and it's not very wide. So drop that left wing into the wind, and as soon as that left main touches down, immediately get the other main down and the nose down. Effective braking, and that's wide stance gear is going to help you stay on that narrow runway, not hit a runway light, go off in the gravel mud, drop a gear, ruin an airplane, etc., etc. So it's a nice feature. You're also seeing the two PDOT tubes because the airplane has co-pilot instruments. You'll have 4 static ports, 2 on each side, and the double PDOT tubes. Here you can clearly see the scoop for the intercooler system underneath each engine. Great looking airplane. Certified no and ice. Air conditioned. 3-bladed heated propellers. Hot plate on the windshield. Here's a shot of the landing gear from the back. Once again, just visualize we had a strong wind, in this case from the, let's make it again, the left side of the airplane, the pilot side. After we've dropped that wing, get that main on, then the other main. If this were a narrow runway, you can see how that's going to help you stabilize in both on that narrow runway and just in normal crosswind takeoffs and landings. You also see the propeller in the upper image there of each side coming back with the prop wash would come back over the horizontal stabilizer and elevator. Another great feature of the 340 is the large vertical surface. And you can see that 50% of the vertical area is rudder. It's a big barn door with a large trim tab. So for crosswind landings and takeoffs, you have a lot of good yaw control and in single engine practice and operations. If we're going along in cruise, let's just say we're at 16,000 and 17,000 feet, we're on autopilot, heading mode, we've got the bug set on the heading, and I reach down and I slowly pull the throttle back. This airplane will turn 2 degrees, that's all. Now if we did nothing, the wing would eventually start to drop due to lack of lift. We'll punch the autopilot off, put in some rudder, get rid of the pressures with the trim tab, and we have a docile Cessna 340 big twin in the sky flying around as you practice your single engine operations. My personal technique, about a half mile out on final, 3/4 of a mile, I get rid of the trim. I like to fight it, if you will, the last half mile or so. I just don't want to pull the throttles off on landing and have a lot of trim in there where the airplane then would yaw on me a little bit. You also see the vortex generators on the vertical stabilizer, and the ones on the wing are just behind the boot line. We'll see that in a second. I think we should have seen it earlier. They're little con artists. They make it a safer twin. They put a little blast of air, like a little horizontal tornado, on the rudder or the aileron, giving you more yaw control and roll control. Makes it a safer airplane. A byproduct of vortex generators is reduced takeoff and landing distance. If you're safely taking off at a slower speed, that's reduced takeoff distance. You're approaching at a slower speed, less landing distance, and you save on tires and brakes. Here's the vortex generators right behind the boot line. 4 windows on each side. Also, if you'll look right on that blue stripe, you'll see a little light that shines on the boot at night. It's part of the no and icing package. It's called an ice detection light. Beautiful interior, forward facing obviously, so let's just describe the interior. It's beige leather, beige carpet, beige seat belts, and pilot and co-pilot shoulder harness. The side panels, like many airplanes, the carpet comes up about 1/3 of the way. Then we have a beige brown pattern and fabric and leather armrests. Headrest adjusts. These seats track and adjust forward and aft and recline. You can see the fuel selectors on the floor. That's where they're at in twin Cessnas. You can see the Rosen sun visors. They're great. They're like sunglasses. You look right through them. You don't have to look around them like the automotive type. On the right side of the cabin is the emergency escape hatch. You can see it there with the little plastic handle that you break off, and there's a red handle behind there. Armrests for all seats. They're of course stowed for takeoff and landing, as is the table, which you'll see shortly. Tables and armrests stowed for takeoffs and landings. Great interior, big windows, lots of openness. Seats adjust, armrests pop out. You can see the one on the pilot seat and this passenger seat. Headrest adjust. All the woodwork's been done. Beautiful table. It's not the old original kind of a brown, drabby looking table that came originally in the airplane. Looks really nice. The airplane has a 6-place intercom system. There's your jacks that you see right there on the side panel. Looking aft, we can see several things. Seat number 5, that's the one by the door, has been removed, and it is available. Most people take it out. You can see there is a relief tube under the back shelf. Cessna factory air conditioning you see in the back of the airplane, and it also comes out over a couple of outlets for pilot and co-pilot. Lots of baggage. The way we load this airplane is always first fuel. Always fuel first that you need for the trip. Then we load up the nose. The airplane flies nice with the nose heavy. Then we put what we need to put in the wing lockers. Then we run that seat forward. If it's in the airplane, seat number 5, put the items in the back shelf here that you want on board. Food, toys, games, things that you don't want exposed to non-pressurization and cold, and those would be on board. 4.2 psi pressurization, so let's say at 20,000 feet you've got about a 7,500 foot cabin, quite comfortable like the airlines. The seat you see there, sometimes called the boss's seat or spouse's seat. If you have some small children, they can be in car seats on the 2 aft facing seats. Mom sits there, all her kitty gear is right there where seat number 5 would have been. Diaper bag, food, toys, games, things to keep kids busy, or just things that she wants to get to or your boss wants to get to in flight. Carpet's in great shape. See the armrest? That's just a tie down. The gray straps you see there are just some what we call cargo tie downs. This airplane has a old refreshment center, or it's really just a storage unit today. I think that was a cassette player that's in there. You can keep miscellaneous stuff in here. Looks good. The laminate's in very good shape. Here's the beauty of this airplane, and we'll do some close-ups here. Nice, great cabin. I rate panels separate from cabins. I judge the glass, the screws, instrument alignment, faces of instruments. So let's just kind of work our way up from the bottom. The little black knob you see there in front of the pilot underneath the sub panel is the parking brake. The silver handle under there on that carpeting is alternate P-dot static source, alternate static. All your switches and circuit breakers are conveniently on the pilot's left. Let's just go up top side. We have a digital clock, the Garmin 500 electronic flight display with a primary flight display and a multifunction display. The backup instruments to the left, attitude, altimeter, airspeed, and right behind the horn on the pilot's yoke, you'll see it hopefully different as the turn and slip. The Enunciator Panel, different colors, lights. Some are advisories, some are warnings, some are just letting you know a system's on or off. The little small gauge above the Enunciator Panel is the prop heat, lets you know when the props are working. Let's go down to the sub panel. Underneath the yoke, 4 red switches are the mags. To the left of that is the 2 red starter buttons, and the manual primer above that are the starter and the battery and the alternators. Pressurization controls are to the left of the landing gear switch. Going across the top, manifold, RPM, shade, and digital fuel flow, EGT, the 2 RAM engine clusters, 3-in-1s they're called, oil pressure, oil temp, oil pressure, oil temp, and cylinder temp. We also have a graphic engine monitor, JPI EM760, just to the left of the Garmin 530, and to the right of the Garmin 530. On the 3-in-1 gauges, when they're all in the green, it looks like the letter of the alphabet upside down, Y Yankee, or the Mercedes hood symbol. I like to line up on the runway, bring my power up to about 1700 RPM, say out loud, Mercedes looks good. I know, or you can even say, all in the green. I know you're not referring to the landing gear when we're getting ready to roll. On the co-pilot side, full instruments, that's why we had 4 static ports and 2 P-dot tubes, airspeed, attitude, barometric, altimeter, DG, vertical speed, fuel quantity in pounds and gallons, suction. So we have everything we need. Underneath the co-pilot's yoke, you'll see the flaps and part of the pressurization heater controls. Avionics, we have a Garmin 750, a 530 to the right of it. Underneath the 750, Enunciator audio panel, transponder under the 530, DME underneath that. Still like to have a DME. It's a good cross-reference to the GPS mileage. Flap switch, blind pilot concept on the throttles, props and mixtures, different shapes, color sizes. Autopilot is the Warner B Autopilot with flight director. Yaw dampeners just to the left of the autopilot head. The little rocker switch on the autopilot just turns it on, electricity, power. Then we come up to the mode selector that's right below the red multifunction display that you see, and we have to tell it what to do. Hold heading, fly course, hold altitude, shoot an approach, whatever you wish it to do. We'll get some close-ups of the rest of the instrument panel in just a second. 3 axes of trim. The large trim tab you see by the left throttle is elevator. It's the one we use the most, and we have an electric trim tab button on the pilot's yoke. I like to have your hands on the throttles and your thumb on the electric trim when we're close to the ground. After we get in the air, have some safe altitude, 800, 900 feet, then use the manual elevator trim. It's more sensitive and there's no lead or lag. In quantity, the next trim tab we use is the nose underneath the autopilot control head, left, right, yaw, that's the nose. And the one we use the least is the very sensitive aileron trim tab, the little knob you see to the left of the nose trim. Next, let's just start on the left side. Prop amp meter, Enunciator Panel. There's the flight director that was originally and still is in the airplane before the Garmin 500 electric altimeter, so we have a backup barometric on the co-pilot side. True airspeed, not just airspeed, true airspeed. Turn and slip is just again to underneath the audio panel. Mags, starter buttons, pressurization controls, landing gear, Garmin 500, manifold RPM, shade and digital fuel flow, audio panel. We have a Garmin 340, 750 touchscreen. Yokes are in good shape. They don't need powder coating or leather covering. I have some great shops that do leather covering. Looks like stitching on a hard ball in baseball. Just great, beautiful. Panel's in great condition. As I said, I rate it separately from cabins. It's in very good condition. I'm not on placarding. I really like to see nice placarding. You can see it above the avionics there throughout the airplane. Good avionics, great placarding. Across the top, manifold RPM, shade, RAM, EGT, 2, 3, and 1 gauges, fuel system, outside air temperature, airspeed on the co-pilot side. If you'll notice on the flap switch, there's some little ledges right under the black flap switch. They're called pre-selects. After a while, you'll know where they're at. You'll just press down and hit one of those little edges, cliffs. You don't have to stare over there that the flaps are moving. If the silver needle pointer is moving, the flaps are moving. It's a direct connect. And you'll get a feel for them. It doesn't take more than a flight or two, and you'll have it down. Trust me, I've seen it many a time. Full co-pilot instruments, yokes in great shape. Right underneath the graphic engine monitor, you see propeller synchro phaser. Again, the panel's in very good shape. Screw alignment, instrument faces, very good condition. Close-up of the quadrant, throttle spot mixtures. The reason that left throttle is fat, the bigger one, it's part of the go-around enunciation. So if we're doing a go-around, we can hit the little button that's on the left side of the left throttle, and we get a pitch-up command. If you look at the pressurization controls, you'll notice that we have a controller that has an outer and inner window. There's several ways of setting pressurization. A lot of things in aviation are technique, not actually POH or FAR. I like to set it the following way. On the inner scale, there's a little index. I set it to the altitude we're going. Let's just say it's 20,000 feet. I go ahead and before we take off, set the controller to 20,000 feet on the inner scale. That'll probably show on the outer scale about a 7,000 foot cabin. The little black knob you see at the 7 o'clock position of the controller has a little arrow on it. It looks like it's worn off, but we put that at 12 o'clock, which allows the cabin to climb and descend at 500 feet a minute. But we can control that. It's a variable, but it's normally preset to go up at 500 feet a minute. We take off. Let's say we're going to 20,000 feet. The airplane will start to pressurize. It'll probably get to the max differential of 4.2 before we get to 20,000 feet outside altitude, and our cabin will be at about 7,000 feet, 7,500. On the gauge that's to the left of the controller, there are two white needles. They overlap, so you can't see them both. But the outer one would indicate 7,000 on the outer scale, which would confirm the cabin altitude, and the small little needle would be at the red line of 4.2, which would confirm the PSI. if we had the leaks, plural leaks, the cabin probably would be higher rather than 7,000, 8,000 or 9,000. You're still pressurized, it's just not holding cabin pressure, and the PSI would be less. It might be 3 or 33.5. And we find the leaks and correct it. It's not that hard to do. It's a simple system to use. You won't do step climbs in a 340. You're not a jet going to 35, 40,000 feet. You may get in a little ATC level off now and then, but basically you'll climb to your altitude. We will step down on the descent. You're probably not going to get from 20,000 to pattern altitude, and we just step it down, move the controller from 20,000 to 18 to 16 to 14 to whatever the descent may be. You can see the circuit breakers and switches for all our controls are convenient on the pilot's left. Those are the rheostat and lighting that you see at the top. They're the sliding white switches. The volt amp meter condition of battery and alternators is the black knob with the meter above it. All our circuit breakers convenient on the pilot's left. Let's summarize how we do business. The airplane's based in Duncan, Oklahoma. The shop you see in the background, DFW Aeromechanics, has maintained this airplane years ago for when it was based at Addison Airport, and they've just detailed it. That's all they've done on this particular trip. We could bring it back down and have them do a pre-purchase inspection. You arrive, your pilot arrives, easy to get to Dallas, Texas. Buyer's evaluation flight comes first. I guess I left off something. First of all, we make an offer on the airplane. We may verbalize it, but assuming it's accepted, we put it in writing on a Jerry Temple offer to purchase form. It's not a final purchase agreement, it says so. A 5% deposit is placed in escrow in Oklahoma City. No money is given to the seller or me. So once we have an accepted offer and deposit, you have 2 days to get a deposit in. Time is of the essence, so once I inform you that an offer's been accepted, 5% deposit in escrow within a couple days. It's just good business. We then set up the pre-purchase examination, test flight, and physical examination of the airplane. There'll always be squawks. These airplanes are not new, and even if they were new, and I've sold new airplanes, there'll probably be some discrepancies. Good shops stay busy, but I have some influence to get them into some shops. We work out the issues. I'm pretty good at resolving the issues. We then close, fund, and ownership changes. Let me say it again. Resolve the issues, close, fund, ownership changes. No maintenance is performed on the airplane until ownership changes, which is the way you, the new owner, want. You want to be in command of any maintenance that's being done on your airplane. After the maintenance, I always say modifications and maintenance and modifications is completed on the airplane. JTA can provide pro-sale support, helping you get this airplane home from the pre-buy facility to your new base or somewhere that you need the airplane to go. We can also discuss pilot checkout and training. Been doing it for a long time. Hope you've enjoyed this. Again, you're on my website, jerrytemple.net. Look at the technical data sheet, the spec sheet. Under the button called Buyer Services, read the outline titled Domestic Sales Procedures, or if appropriate, International Sales Procedures. Under Temple's tips or articles on twin Cessnas that I've written over the years. This is a lovely 81 340A Ram 6 with brand new engines done by Ram in Waco, and propellers, no on ice, air conditioned. Excellent panel, Garmin 500 750. Has a GDL 88 ADS-B out. Also has a GTX 330 ES ADS-B. So you got two forms of ADS-B. GDL 69 weather data. You also have a Garmin Flight Stream Bluetooth, so you can load up information, put it on your iPad or from the iPad into the cockpit instruments. We can talk about that some more. Vortex generators, 183 gallon fuel system. Excellent airplane. Annual's not going to be due till next July of 2019. Hope you've enjoyed this. Give me a call. We'll be happy to explain more systems and equipment and go over your specific situation. Thank you.